Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. The fugitive couple, Casey White and Vicki White, are doing quite well. 7 days on the run so far and counting. On the line is freedom for both of them versus time in the slammer. In Vicki's case, it might well be time on the other side of those bars in a woman's prison if they put a foot wrong and if they are captured. Now, in a previous video, I suggested Vicki had likely bought the vehicle, since she'd sold her home fairly recently, and parked it herself to be picked up later. That's now been verified. And it is actually quite a nice vehicle, quite a nice vehicle to actually be abandoned, just to be left behind. And one wonders how much money was left behind in terms of the cost of that vehicle as well. I also predicted that they would head south or west. Instead, they seem to be going east and north. We tend to think that the criminal mind thinks rationally and sensibly, but not always. Obviously, if everyone is thinking south and east, if we think that that makes sense, then it also makes sense to sort of do the opposite of one expects. It's hard to say whether that's the case here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually reading the news and watching YouTube videos about themselves and then adapting their responses. You might think that that sounds far-fetched, but I was actually covering a triple murder trial in court, also writing a book about it while the trial was taking place, publishing a series of books while the trial was taking place. And I later found out from the girlfriend of the accused that they were actually reading the book. And it actually gave me a bit of a shock that in an indirect way, I think I was actually helping them by showing them what people were thinking and providing some insight into what other criminals did under the same circumstances in trial. Anyway, thinking broadly though, attempting a getaway in a bronze copper vehicle seems not very smart to begin with. Almost as bad as going on the lam in a red Ferrari. If the idea is not to stick out, well, it might not work so well. But even if they had fled in, say, a white Toyota, the couple themselves are so odd-looking and disproportionate in terms of one another, it's going to be tough to stay out of the crosshairs of ordinary observation, that's of law enforcement or the public at large. And I do think it was quite clever, quite perceptive of the U.S. Marshal Service to provide a sort of silhouette to give you a sense of her being sort of shoulder height to him and him being about the height of a doorpost, of a door frame, sorry. They are a little bit like Laurel and Hardy in terms of these silhouettes. He's especially tall at 6'9", so he's far taller than average, and that is going to stick out. One troubling question is whether the two, now at close quarters 24/7, are getting along. I mean, can you imagine a situation where you are romantically involved with someone who's, accused of killing people, and what happens when you guys don't get along so well? And so another question is, who is taking the lead in their relationship? It's been revealed that the two have been in an affair for 2 years, but that's based on a dynamic where I think she had the real power and she was also the authority figure in that dynamic, right? What's the dynamic like now? And when the couple are on the road and they have a proper disagreement, what's going to happen then? Also on sort of ordinary questions like who's going to be driving? Does he have a driver's license? Who decides where they are going? In a typical road trip situation, and I guess they're on a kind of road trip adventure or maybe misadventure, sort of typical questions that one faces are, where do you want to go? Where should we go? What is the best option? And also, what is the best route to take to get to wherever we've agreed to go, kind of thing. And so, how is she going to handle that? How is he going to handle that? That's the critical question. How is he going to handle disagreements? Now, the vehicle, when it was discovered, had Vicki's handcuffs, jail keys, and radio in the car. It was actually discovered in Tennessee, but here is the critical clue. There were signs of an amateurish attempt to spray paint the vehicle, either black or actually looks like it might be a greenish color. This attempt to hide by changing color does translate to something like her changing her hair color, possibly cutting her hair as well, and him wearing a hat or a wig and likely growing a beard. Less easy to conceal will be his tattoos, especially those on his shoulders and arms, and bear in mind summer is coming up in America. Also, his height isn't going to be very easy to conceal. At the moment, they've eluded law enforcement for a week. The car puts them in the region of Williamson County, Tennessee, about 2 hours north of Florence, Alabama, and potentially indicates a general direction of travel. The next week will be a lot harder. I suspect they'll head west towards Kansas, but I've been wrong before. The critical question now is, what vehicle are they traveling in and how long before we find out? I also think it is worth thinking long term about this, and no doubt the longer they are on the run and the more the walls move in, the more they're going to be also thinking, how could this possibly end? In other words, is it going to end in tears? Also, do I need to ditch my partner in order to save myself? And given that they've been together for 2 years, that seems unlikely. But as the stress, as the anxiety increases, possibly that temptation to survive, to make sure that I survive, I'm the most important person in this equation, that might come to the fore more and more. Bear in mind also, she's the one with the money. And isn't the temptation going to come from him? Perhaps if they're having a disagreement, perhaps she wants to go one way, he wants to go the other. If he decides to basically override what she's saying, and perhaps if they have an argument, is he not going to perhaps take matters into his own hands? And if he does that, is he not also going to take her money? And perhaps even more than that. Let's hope not. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. And I'll see you guys next time.